Well, welcome back to our series on the Acts of the Apostles. And basically what we're dealing with at the moment is Paul's second missionary journey. And as you'll see as we look at it, it is quite horrendous. Because as we ended the last chapter, what happened was that Paul had been back to Jerusalem to discuss with them the fact that Gentiles are accepted and that they didn't have to conform to all Jewish laws. And then he took the church's letter coming from Jerusalem. And from Jerusalem then he went off with Barnabas as far as Antioch. Now, to get to Antioch is quite a long way from Jerusalem. I'm very familiar with all the territory we're going to be talking about today, because when I made my famous journeys, beginning in the first journey in 1961 from England, from the north of England right to Jerusalem, I covered much of this route, and we continued doing it all the way through until 1967, when in the Six-Day War in Israel, the route was closed. So I did this up to 8 times a year at one stage. So if you can understand that I do know what this is like. So by the time we come to chapter 16, what's happened is this, that in the end of chapter 15, Paul has separated from Barnabas with a disagreement, and so actually Barnabas took Mark, went to Cyprus, Paul chose Silas, and left to go through Syria and Cilicia. Now, what we're looking at, this is the second of Paul's missionary journeys. What we're actually looking here, I do have a map in front of me from Antioch, Antioch it's situated in the north of Syria, the northwest of Syria, close to the border of what is now Turkey. And so he now takes Paul and Silas into this area, which is now Turkey, and he goes to visit a number of places, and it's quite incredible when you look. He came to Derbe and then to Lystra. Now, these places are well into Turkey. And what is Turkey now? He's gone through the Taurus Mountains. He's actually bypassed, or possibly called in at Tarsus, which was on the route, actually, Tarsus, where Paul was born. So he's gone through from leaving Antioch. He's crossed into Turkey, and he's passed through Tarsus, and then comes to Derbe, and then on to Lystra. Now, at Lystra, as you see, even in the first verse, this is where another disciple, Timothy, lived. Now, the problem with Timothy is that his mother was a Jewess and a believer. That's a believer in Jesus Christ. But his father was a Greek. And now the brothers in this whole of this area, because we're looking at an area covering Lystra and Iconium, they spoke well of this young Timothy. And so Paul decides to take him on the journey along with Silas. But we have a problem. Because the boy's father is Greek, although his mother was a Jewess, he's not been circumcised. And here you get something very unusual happening, because although we know that previously, when he took Titus, he didn't circumcise Titus, took him to show that God did not require these outward actions, but an inward spiritual transformation. But now, because he's concerned about the Jews living in that area, I'm afraid Paul has to circumcise Timothy. So then, by the time you're still in this first part of the chapter, you find out that they traveled from town to town, delivering the decisions reached by the apostles in Jerusalem, and carrying the letters from Jerusalem for the people to obey. So the churches were strengthened in the faith and grew daily in numbers. Now, what you need to realize is the vast areas on this second missionary journey that Paul is taking. It's estimated that in all his missionary journeys, Paul must have covered something like 10,000 miles. That's 16,000 kilometers. Now, this would have been, and we were discussing actually in the office how he would have traveled. Part of it was by ship, as we know, but the rest of it was basically either on foot or just merely with a donkey. Now, I know what this is like, because when I travelled myself from where I live near Leeds in England to Jerusalem, the return trip was 6,000 miles, 10,000 kilometres. And so I know full well that what took me, I mean, I've been travelling with a car and eventually with big buses. But what Paul did was actually to travel about 50% further than I travelled on that return trip. In other words, he travelled, my trip was about 6,000 miles return, and he travelled 10, which is sort of 1.5 times my journey. All this on foot, taking a long period of time because he was stopping on the way. So by the time you come to verse 6, and by the way, I'm in the NIV, the New International Version, Paul and his companions travelled throughout the whole region of Phrygia and Galatia. And what I find is very interesting here is that he was preaching the word in Phrygia and Galatia, but the Holy Spirit, this is very interesting, the Holy Spirit prevented him preaching the word in the province of Asia.